Hello there, it's Jo here with another Time for Tea Designs video tutorial. Today's video was filmed during our Facebook Live on Thursday and it featured these really cute unicorns and some rainbow stenciling in the background. So I'm going to start with that and you can see I've got a piece of my cardstock that I've already cut using the Hooray cover plate die and that's created an A6 size card base for me. And now I'm using one of the rainbows that are on the Over the Rainbow stencil. So this is the medium-sized rainbow. And I'm using the brand new small blender brushes in order to create my stripes of different colour within my rainbow. I've started with some worn lipstick on the outer curve of the rainbow. And now I'm using some of my ripe persimmon for the second stripe, and then some squeezed lemonade for the third. So I'm working my way through the rainbow colours using a different blender brush for each of the different colours within that rainbow, just to keep those colour families separate. You can use different shades of green with the same brush, different shades of blue with the same brush, but I like to keep the different colour families separate. Just to keep my colours from merging together and becoming muddy. I really don't think that you would be able to achieve a result like this without using these really small brushes. They're perfect for getting into those tiny spaces. And look, you can see there just what a beautiful rainbow effect that makes. So I'm going to repeat the process with another of the medium rainbows here. And I've just positioned my stencil slightly off my my card panel there, and this is so that it creates the effect of a pattern. So I'm making my own patterned papers just by keeping on repositioning my stencil and moving that where I want it around my card base. I'm using the same colours. So I'm using the ripe persimmon as my second colour. The first colour I laid down there was the worn lipstick. Some of my squeezed lemonade will be second, and then I'll move on to mowed lawn for the green, and salty ocean finishes my rainbow selection off there. And I'm just wiping off my stencil in between each rainbow that I do, just so that I don't smear any of that colour elsewhere. And I'm also using some of my purple tape just on my fingers, just to prevent me from transferring any of that ink anywhere else, and to prevent my fingers from smudging into my finished piece as well. Now I did manage to make a little bit of a smudge in the top left-hand corner, which I didn't notice until later on. But it was just a tiny little small little smudge, and I'll show you later on how we managed to cover that up. So I'm now moving to one of the smaller rainbows. So this is the smallest on the set, and this just has 4 stripes, if you like, or 4 curves to the rainbow. So I've taken out the orange colour, the ripe persimmon, and then just used the same 4 colours as before. Wiped down my stencil, and now I'm repositioning this so that I'm using again that same small rainbow, but in the bottom left hand corner, just going off my page. So again, this is just adding to that effect of it looking like my own patterned paper, and I've just cut my card panel out of that pattern. So same 4 colours. This obviously has been speeded up on the live. This obviously I took a little bit of care, although it didn't take an awful lot of time, but you can obviously take a little bit more time when you're doing it yourself to make sure that those colours all stay independent of each other. The Distress Oxide inks really work well for this effect, because if they do overlap, then that doesn't create a muddy effect, and they just look really, really colourful and really fun. So I'm happy with the way my background's turned out there. It was very therapeutic, just colouring in all of those curves, and because the end result is so colourful and fun, it's really worth spending the time on. So now I'm going to use one of my medium blender brushes now to create little clouds on the bottom of each end of my rainbow. And I'm using some, I think it's tumbled glass that I'm using there, yes, tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink, just to add those clouds. And I've used the medium-sized cloud for the medium-sized rainbow, and then the smallest one for the smaller rainbow. So that's just to add a little bit of colour into the background. It doesn't fully cover up my rainbow and the ends of the rainbow there, but also the colour is easily laid on top of the previous colour, so again it doesn't create a muddy effect. But what I wanted to do was add some sparkle and add a little bit of texture to this. So the next stage is to apply some of my Cosmic Shimmer texture paste. And I'm using the Frosty Dawn texture paste, and I'm just making sure that I'm not going to get anything else anywhere through the rest of my stencil. So I've just blocked off all of those other gaps with my purple tape, so that I don't transfer any of that paste. So I'm just lining that up over where I've already added ink to my clouds, and starting with the medium one, I'm adding my texture paste in a thin layer with my palette knife. Now, this is where I realised that I'd actually made a bit of an error, and I should have started at the top of my project with the smallest, and I just got overexcited with the way it was looking, went straight into the middle with my medium-sized clouds. So I'm now going to have a little bit of I suppose a bit of a challenge trying to line up the rest of my stencil so that it doesn't squidge any of the previously applied texture paste, because that of course is all still quite wet. So I'm just bending my stencil and positioning it really carefully, and then using my palette tool to just poke into those little areas the texture paste that I need. And it did work really well, but you can see the top one there, I did struggle a little bit. I had to be really, really careful how I manipulated my stencil to make sure that when I lifted that back up off my page, I didn't smudge it too much. But it works out well, but I would do it differently if I was to do it again. So I'm moving on now to stamping out my images. So I'm using the Unicorn in Training stamp set. This is a really adorable set with some really cute images. So I've picked out 2 of my unicorns and then some of the accessory stamps that we'll use in creating our scene. And I'm stamping this onto some of our super smooth cardstock using some Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I'm just wiping over the top of my stamping platform there, and then I'm cleaning this up with some of our stamp cleaner, which really helps me get a nice clean finish to my stamps so that I don't transfer any fibres to my next project. Once those have been stamped out, I'm going to use my Copic markers now to colour them in, and I'm just adding a quick bit of shading using the C1 and C3 to underneath the mane and around their bodies, and then the RV000 and RV10 to their muzzles, just to add a little bit of colour, and to the unicorn horns. Now for the fun bit is to add our rainbow effect to the manes and the tails. So I'm using the same sort of rainbow series of colours as we've used for our rainbow stenciled background. So, but I've added in an extra shade, the shade of purple. So we've gone for a V17, an RV14, the R27 as our red shade, which is an extra shade in the series, the YR68 for our orange, YO8 is our yellow shade, YGO6 is our shade of green, and then finishing with the B05 for our blue. And that's just created a really pretty rainbow stripe along each of those areas, and really mimics the rainbow background that we created. We used exactly the same colours to to finish off the accessories that will go in our background and finish off our scene. So, but I've just mixed up which ones I choose to add to each of those. So just used 3 of the colours for our swooshing star. I'm going to use all of the colours to make up our lollipop, and then I've just used the pink, the green and the blue for our stars. So once they're all coloured up how I want, I'm just going to use the coordinating dies now to cut each of those out. So I'm just going to match up each of those and use a little bit of my washi tape to secure those in place so that they don't move around in the die cutting machine. This is, something that when you've got these smaller images, having the accompanying dies really does help, and it means that your crafting is much quicker and you don't have to worry about the effort of fussy cutting. You also get this beautiful crisp white edge that is slightly embossed as it's gone through the machine, and I just love popping each of those out of the dies and then seeing the finished result. It looks so adorable. So that's all of our images cut and ready to put in place. So we now need a card base. So I've just scored an A4 piece of cardstock. So this is one of our new colours of cardstock, and it's the perfect weight for a card base. And I'm just using a previously cut A6 panel, which is the same as the one that we've created our background on, the same size. And I'm using that as a guide in order to cut down my my card base so that it's slightly larger than that A6 panel. I haven't used any measuring. I'm just doing that by eye and using my paper trimmer to cut that out. So now I've got a top folding card blank, and I've also got a spare piece of cardstock that was the waste from us doing our trimming. So I'm going to use that extra piece to stamp our sentiment. So I'm going to use the sentiment Follow Your Dreams, and I'm going to add some anti-static powder to that card first before I add my sentiments, my sentiment stamps, and I'm going to use the grids on the stamping platform to help me line those up so that I'm getting those in the right place. I'm adding some of my embossing ink, stamping that out, and then I'm going to get a little bit of my scratch paper and tip on some of my bright white embossing ink. Where I've had a few little flakes that I've got in the way there, I've just used a really fine paintbrush just to brush those out of the way. I'm going to use my heat tool now just to set that embossing ink into place, that embossing powder into place, and that melts beautifully to create a lovely bright white sentiment against our lovely purple cardstock. So really sorry about my head popping into view there, but I really had to get a really close look so that I could see that I was lining up my sentiment correctly. And I did, but I made an error here. As I was removing my washi tape, I tore my card, and that left a bit of a nasty little frayed look at the top of my sentiment. However, I had a solution. I could use one of my my little embellishments, my extra accessories, to cover that up, and it turned out actually that was a really perfect placement for that extra swoosh, and you would never know that that mistake had happened. So another way to cover up some of your mistakes is to obviously use some of your extra little accessories and embellishments just to cover those up, and no one would ever know. So that was really useful. I'm using some of my liquid ink now just to adhere my base. Now, because we were filming this live, my texture paste wasn't fully dry. So I would recommend that you let your texture paste fully dry before you try and attach it to your card base. But because we were limited on time, we had to go with it. But thankfully, each of my little characters is going to sit on the rainbow rather than anywhere near the texture paste. So that wasn't going to cause us any issues there. So I've added some of my foam tape and I'm just popping that onto the back of my little unicorns so that they've got a little bit of dimension. And the one that's leaping or appears to be leaping is going to go on that larger rainbow that's more centralized. And then our other little unicorn, I'm just going to add to the one in the bottom right hand corner. And then for balance, our sentiment will sit opposite him in the bottom left. So again, just off camera there, I'm just adding some more foam tape for some dimension and popping that across the bottom left there, just making sure that that's straight. And then, like I said, where we've made a little bit of an error, I can use my little star swoosh and a little bit of liquid glue just to sit over that little tear, and that covers that up perfectly. And the top left-hand corner, it's difficult to see on screen, but there was a little bit of a smudge of my inks. So again, those little stars cover that up beautifully. And then again, for balance, I thought my little lollipop would sit perfectly on the top right-hand side of our card. For a little bit of extra finishing touches, you can never have enough sparkle, can you? So I'm going to add some of my stickles to each of the unicorn horns. So I'm just, I've used quite a lot of this, so I'm having to really squeeze the tube to get that out. So I've added that to each of those little horns, and then using my Jelly Roll pen, which wasn't playing ball either because it was so hot the evening that we filmed this. So I think everything was having a little bit of trouble. But I just added a few highlights to each of those areas, and that was our card complete. I was really happy with how it turned out, even though there were a few little errors along the way and a few things that I would have done differently next time. But I hope that you've got something from the card tutorial and that you can see how you would perhaps do things differently, or how easy it would be to correct any mistakes that you might happen to make. Thank you so much for watching today. We really do appreciate it. If you did enjoy the video, then it would be awesome if you could like and subscribe to our channel, as it really does help. And we'll see you again in another video real soon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye now.